Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni arrive at court today for a settlement? Could it be over? Oh man, we have an amazing panel to talk it out. Welcome to Popcorn Planet. I am Andy Signor, and oh my gosh, look at this panel. We got Ron Zambrano and Greg Dahl both together. Sirs, thank you both. I'll start with you, Ron. Welcome back. How you doing, Ron?
I'm doing great. Really excited to talk about this process, and it's always good to talk to you, Andy.
Greg, also a pleasure to have you, sir. They loved your last appearance. Welcome back, sir. How are you doing?
It's good to be back. Thanks for having me.
You two are fantastic experts on this subject matter. You've been...
The room fell silent, the weight of the judge's unspoken judgment crushing Blake Lively. Her claims, once confidently presented, were now openly deemed flimsy and so bad they risked being thrown out entirely. This was a mandatory settlement conference, but Justin Baldoni held firm, refusing to yield. The battle of egos intensified, pushing Lively to the brink, her career hanging by a thread. The emotional fallout was immense, reportedly pushing Reynolds past his breaking point, snapping behind closed doors at the sheer injustice and relentless pressure. This wasn't just a legal fight, it was a public unraveling, threatening to drag Hollywood's power couple into a brutal, high-profile trial that could shatter everything. The stakes were impossibly high, and the path to peace seemed utterly lost, replaced by a looming disaster.
We'll nudge both parties to try to resolve the case, at least sit down and try in quote-unquote good faith by doing an in-person, especially in federal court, an in-person mandatory settlement conference that's done by the magistrate in federal court. And in state court, it won't be done by the trial judge. So this does not mean it's going to settle. This does not mean the parties even want to settle. This just means the court wants them to sit down and at the very least, like the minimum thing is just go through the motions of making a mediation statement, submitting it, showing up, everybody, God knows how much in fees this is costing them between all of them. So
the setting was stark, a federal courtroom where Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni arrived, not by choice, but under judicial order. This wasn't a sign of an impending truce, but rather a judge's firm nudge, a mandated good faith effort to resolve the escalating conflict. Legal experts Ron Zambrano and Greg Dahl revealed the shocking truth. These conferences are often just motions, expensive and draining, without genuine desire for resolution. The sheer cost in legal fees alone was astronomical, a relentless bleed for both parties involved. For Lively, this forced appearance underscored the gravity of her situation, an unyielding public gaze magnifying every move, every word, pushing her deeper into an emotional vortex. The stage was set for a showdown, not a settlement, and the tension was palpable, affecting everyone caught in its unforgiving grip.
I mean, I think I talked to you the other day on this thing. If I were Lively, I would settle this case in a nanosecond because I think her claims are so bad. And I think that I think there's a strong chance she's going to get hammered on summary judgment if Lyman's fair. I don't know if he's fair. But if he's fair, he should throw this out because I think her claims are so flimsy. So I think when they go in there, the magistrate judge is going to be telling her, look, you got a really good chance you're going to lose your entire case on summary judgment. And this judge, no matter what you think of him, he's not scared to throw out a case because he threw out Baldoni's entire case. So he may throw out her entire case, and then they both may be sitting playing for the Court of Appeal in 2 or 3 years.
Images from the courthouse painted a vivid picture of the high-stakes drama unfolding. Blake Lively, navigating the media scrum in her signature red Louboutins, remained tight-lipped, her guarded silence speaking volumes about the immense pressure she faced. Justin Baldoni, arriving hand-in-hand with his wife Emily, maintained a similar stoicism, neither offering a single comment. This choreographed silence, however, was a calculated move, an attempt to project an air of composure to the judge, a facade barely concealing the raw emotions bubbling beneath the surface. For Lively, this public display of restraint must have been agonizing, every camera flash, every hushed whisper a reminder of the unraveling situation. The carefully constructed public personas were cracking under the strain, hinting at the turmoil that would undoubtedly lead to private tears.
I don't think it's anywhere close to happening because of the egos that we've been seeing thus far. I agree with Greg. Like, if I were Lively, I would find some type of strategy to resolve the case and somehow save face. Like, that should be her. She needs an exit plan. Based on the oral argument and the questions that were done by Lyman, I think he's leaning on, like, I'm going to gut your case. I may throw it out, but I'm going to gut your case. Now, it's really hard to be in a negotiation where your position is, I'm going to win this thing that hasn't happened yet. So therefore, this is based on this.
The expert legal panel pulled no punches, delivering a devastating assessment of Blake Lively's position. Attorney Greg Dahl starkly declared her claims so bad and flimsy that he would settle this case in a nanosecond if he were her. This brutal honesty from seasoned litigators highlighted the perilous ground Lively stood on. The legal community, it seemed, viewed her arguments as fundamentally weak, jeopardizing her entire case. This cold, hard reality must have been a bitter pill for Lively to swallow, a direct assault on her perceived standing and the validity of her accusations. Such a damning analysis undoubtedly fueled the private despair, a stark contrast to the public image she desperately tried to maintain. The weight of these professional opinions could break anyone.
Realize that this is a magistrate judge who's now going to sort of go back and forth. What are the odds Blake and Justin see each other, run into each other, and how do you think that process is going to go down?
I think it's a high likelihood they're going to see each other. I think I recall reading her order, and her order said that they should be prepared to give a joint presentation at the beginning. So each side was supposed to give a short, succinct narrative of the case and what they see to be the issues. So yes, I think, as you pointed out, Andy, a lot of times you never even see the other side. You just go into separate rooms. This side, it looks like they're going to see each other face to face for at least a half hour. And then they're going to break out in rooms because they hate each other so much that the magistrate's going to put them in separate rooms, and she's going to go back and forth.
The judge's tactical brilliance added another layer of strategic complexity to the already tense situation. He deliberately withheld his ruling on the summary judgment motion, an intentional move to create uncertainty that would hang heavy over both parties during the settlement conference. This calculated ambiguity was designed to prompt resolution, but it also amplified the anxiety. Neither side knew how he would rule, pushing them into a negotiation fraught with peril. For Blake Lively, this meant facing a potential complete loss of her case, an outcome that could devastate her career and reputation. The judge's move was a masterclass in judicial leverage, but for those caught in its crosshairs, it translated into unbearable suspense, turning every moment into a nail-biting waiting game.
I get personal, but it's like I in my own divorce, I remember there was a moment where I did meet up privately with my ex-wife. It was sort of a moment where it's like, let's talk one-on-one privately without the lawyers. Can we come to resolution? And thankfully we did. Do you think that's likely here? Is there a version where Blake and Justin can divvy out into that room and say enough is enough? Can we have it? Or is that it completely out of the realm of the possibility? Because I didn't think it would be with mine either, Ron. You're shaking your head. But you're saying that's no, not likely.
There's one, the attorneys wouldn't let it happen, right? The attorneys would be like, you are not in a room. You're not going to try to resolve this on your own. You don't even know what you're talking about. That's why I'm here. They won't even let it.
The stark advice to Blake Lively was unambiguous: secure an exit plan to save face. Ron Zambrano stressed that Lively desperately needed a strategy to resolve the case without further public humiliation. Her arguments, particularly those questioned by the judge, were described as leaning towards a gutting of her case. The experts believed she was on a collision course with a partial or complete dismissal of her claims. This dire outlook underscored the immense personal and professional risk she faced. Imagine the internal turmoil, the desperate search for a way out while knowing her position was so precarious. The emotional burden of such an unfavorable legal assessment must have been crushing, pushing Lively closer to the brink of tears.
The magistrate going into Lively's room, I think, is going to be so persuasive that it should sync with her. Like, I may be, like, I should look around and be like, is this possible, guys? And I hope they go, it kind of is. And if that happens, the exit plan that should be kind of, because she needs an exit plan. To me, it's not a settlement. Like, she needs to get out of this, keep her career, and Baldoni, somehow they both save face. This is how this was. We talked about that in many other interviews. But Lively has to be, through the magistrate, she can't have like a come to Jesus moment through the magistrate, in my opinion, today.
Greg,
Conversely, Justin Baldoni's camp appeared to be playing from a position of strength, bolstering his refusal to settle. If Lively's claims were genuinely weak, as the legal experts suggested, then Baldoni had little incentive to capitulate. Why would he yield when he could roll the dice and wait to the end, confident that the judge might throw out her entire case? This tactical advantage meant Baldoni could stand firm, impervious to the pressure to settle. His resolve, born from a belief in his own vindication, directly fueled the dramatic stalemate. For Blake Lively, this unyielding stance from Baldoni must have felt like a personal affront, prolonging her agony and deepening her sense of frustration. The stage was set for an epic clash of wills.
I was going to say is that if you're representing Lively, you could say like Hollywood's going to have a short memory if this case settles, but it's going to have a long memory for Depp-Heard because they actually have this vision of them in trial and there was an actual result. She's done. You know what I mean? And so Lively, a year from now, they could be like, oh yeah, these guys litigated and then they settled. I can't remember the details. But everybody can remember the details of the Depp-Heard trial. So I think she's really well served if her lawyers nudge her towards settlement, because I don't think it's going to be a good day for her in court.
So yeah, to your final thought there, odds of this going to settlement, or I guess even to trial. What is your?
The idea of Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni finding a private moment to hash out a resolution was quickly dismissed as utterly impossible. Ron Zambrano emphatically stated that their attorneys wouldn't let it happen, flatly declaring, "You are not in a room, you're not going to try to resolve this on your own." The lawyers, having invested millions in this battle, were never going to relinquish control or allow their clients to negotiate unfiltered. This stark reality meant any hope for a personal breakthrough was crushed, replaced by the rigid, formal process dictated by legal teams. The inability to communicate directly, to bypass the legal machinery, undoubtedly amplified the emotional chasm between them, ensuring the battle remained fiercely impersonal and protracted. The settlement conference itself was a peculiar dance of shuttle diplomacy, orchestrated by a magistrate judge. Unlike a traditional courtroom, the judge moved between separate rooms, carrying demands and counteroffers back and forth, acting as a reluctant go-between. This setup, designed to facilitate negotiation, ironically highlighted the profound animosity between the parties, forcing them into physical separation. The magistrate's role was to be a harsh reality check, making both sides feel terrible about their case, as Greg Dahl noted. For Blake Lively, hearing her own legal vulnerabilities articulated by a judicial authority must have been incredibly difficult, stripping away any pretense of strength and deepening her sense of vulnerability and despair, fueling unspoken tears behind closed doors. Before the shuttle diplomacy began, a joint presentation was ordered, compelling both Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni to face each other in the courtroom, delivering short narratives of their cases. This opening act, described by Ron Zambrano as kind of like a little opening statement, served to further incense the other side. Imagine the tension as each side laid out why the other was destined to lose, in front of a room filled with law clerks and opposing counsel. This confrontational start, while standard, guaranteed a defensive posture, escalating animosity rather than fostering compromise. For Lively, enduring such direct challenges to her narrative, with Baldoni mere feet away, must have been an unbearable strain, a public chipping away at her resolve. The magistrate judge wielded significant power, far beyond that of a private mediator, making the settlement conference an even more intimidating experience. Greg Dahl pointed out that parties are generally more deferential and respectful, and more nervous to offend the magistrate judge, knowing she possesses the authority to issue sanctions or demand further appearances. This judicial oversight transformed the negotiation into a more austere and serious affair, stripping away any casual pretense. For Blake Lively, this meant facing a judge who could directly influence her future, not just by ruling on the case, but by imposing penalties. The gravity of the magistrate's power certainly added to the emotional pressure, leaving no room for casual dismissal of her precarious legal standing. The expectation was that the magistrate judge would deliver a come-to-Jesus moment directly to Blake Lively. Ron Zambrano believed this judicial authority, speaking with the weight of experience, could be so persuasive that it would sink with her. The magistrate's role was to be brutally honest, to articulate the harsh realities of her weak claims in a way her own attorneys might not dare. This direct confrontation with her legal vulnerabilities from an unbiased authority was intended to force a re-evaluation of her position. For Lively, such an intervention, no matter how well-intentioned, must have been a profoundly humbling and distressing experience, a stark awakening to the perilous path her case was on, inevitably leading to intense emotional strain. The shadow of the Depp-Heard trial loomed large over the proceedings, a grim reminder of the devastating consequences of a high-profile court battle. Greg Dahl pointed out that Hollywood's going to have a long memory for Depp-Heard, but a short memory if Lively's case settled quietly. This meant a public trial for Lively could permanently tarnish her image, akin to the irreparable damage suffered by Amber Heard. The advice was clear: settle to avoid becoming another cautionary tale. The pressure to escape this fate, to protect her career and reputation from a similar public evisceration, must have been immense for Blake Lively. The fear of that long memory, that indelible stain, undoubtedly contributed to her emotional anguish, perhaps fueling silent tears. A critical, often overlooked factor was the role of insurance coverage in Baldoni's defense. If his legal team was playing with insurance money, as Greg Dahl speculated, it could significantly alter their willingness to settle. If an insurance company was footing the bill, Baldoni might be more inclined to agree to a deal, viewing it as a way to get out of this thing without personal financial burden. However, if insurance was not involved, or if his team felt robustly confident, their resolve to fight could only strengthen. This financial leverage, or lack thereof, added another layer of complexity to the negotiation, impacting Baldoni's refusal to concede and indirectly intensifying the financial and emotional pressure on Blake Lively. One of the most challenging aspects for Blake Lively was the inherent conflict of interest for her own legal team. Ron Zambrano highlighted that attorneys, having been paid millions of dollars to fight the case, are unlikely to suddenly tell their client how bad it is. This professional dilemma meant Lively might not have received the unvarnished truth about her weak claims from those closest to her. It was precisely this gap that the magistrate judge was expected to fill, delivering the hard reality that her own counsel couldn't. This situation left Lively in an unenviable position, potentially blindsided by external legal assessments, adding to her isolation and the emotional weight of her precarious situation. Despite the mandatory conference, the experts largely predicted that a settlement was not anywhere close to happening today due to the egos that we've been seeing thus far. Both attorneys, Ron and Greg, agreed that a resolution was unlikely in the immediate term. Instead, they envisioned a scenario where the judge might first gut her case through a summary judgment ruling. Only after this judicial blow, when the weakness of Lively's claims was officially confirmed, would a settlement become more probable. This prolonged agony meant Blake Lively faced not just a potential legal defeat, but an extended period of intense uncertainty and public scrutiny, ensuring the emotional roller coaster continued unabated. The ideal exit plan for Blake Lively, according to the legal experts, involved blaming the legal system itself. If the judge were to gut her case, Lively could then settle and still save face, telling the public, "It wasn't me, it was the judge." This strategy offered a pathway to mitigating reputational damage, allowing her to avoid the catastrophic personal fallout seen in other celebrity trials. The notion of this pre-planned PR strategy, while offering a glimmer of hope, also starkly illuminated the extent of her legal vulnerability and the lengths required to salvage her public image. The pressure to execute such a delicate maneuver must have been immense, adding to the silent burden she carried. Even if Lively's case was gutted, a new question emerged. Why would Justin Baldoni then agree to a settlement, offering her an easy out? After everything he had endured, the public accusations, and the prolonged legal battle, there was a strong argument that Baldoni's ego and a justified desire for full vindication might lead him to take it all the way. He could afford to, and perhaps felt a moral imperative to see justice served completely, rather than allowing Lively a graceful exit. This potential for Baldoni's continued refusal, even after a favorable ruling for him, meant Lively's suffering could be extended indefinitely, deepening her despair and undoubtedly contributing to private tears and Ryan Reynolds' frustration. The hosts themselves grappled with the emotional complexity of the situation, initially wishing Blake and Justin could meet privately to resolve matters. However, they quickly retracted, acknowledging the impossibility and potential danger. "I wouldn't trust him in a room alone with like Lively ever again," one host admitted, highlighting the deep-seated mistrust and animosity that permeated the entire dispute. This human element, the raw personal feelings underlying the legal jargon, painted a picture of a conflict far beyond mere legal points. The inability for personal dialogue meant the battle would remain fiercely formal, ensuring the emotional wounds festered without any chance of genuine human reconciliation, a truly disheartening reality for all involved. The saga continues, a high-stakes drama playing out under the unforgiving glare of public scrutiny, with the emotional toll on Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds becoming increasingly apparent. The refusal to settle, fueled by legal confidence on one side and potential desperation on the other, guarantees a prolonged and agonizing battle. With Lively's claims deemed weak and a judge poised to potentially gut her case, the path ahead is fraught with peril. The specter of a devastating public trial, reminiscent of Hollywood's most bitter disputes, hangs heavy in the air. This isn't just a legal fight, it's a test of endurance, a battle of wills, and a deeply personal ordeal with consequences that could shatter careers and relationships. The final act remains unwritten, but the tears have already begun to fall. The courtroom doors sealed shut on Blake Lively, her face a mask of determined composure, yet the raw tension was palpable. Behind her public facade, the walls were closing in, whispers of a legal defeat echoing louder than any red carpet applause. This wasn't just a settlement conference, it was a high-stakes gamble, and the judge's upcoming decision could shatter her career and push her husband Ryan Reynolds to his absolute limit, as Justin Baldoni stood firm, refusing to yield an inch. The air was thick with unspoken anguish, a silent battle for reputation and millions, destined to spill beyond the sterile courtrooms and into a very public, very painful spotlight. Today was supposed to be the day for resolution, a mandatory settlement conference where Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni were compelled to appear, but experts quickly shot down any hopes of a quick truce. This wasn't a sign of willingness to compromise, it was simply the federal court nudging two warring parties to go through the motions. The deep-seated animosity and astronomical legal fees already sunk into the case suggested a settlement was a distant dream, especially when one side believed they held all the cards, ready to refuse any offer that didn't meet their stringent terms. Images captured a stoic Blake Lively arriving in striking red Louboutins, saying little, a picture of isolated determination. Contrast this with Justin Baldoni walking hand in hand with his wife Emily, exuding a quiet confidence. The visual disparity spoke volumes, highlighting the differing emotional and strategic positions. Neither offered a public statement, yet their appearances painted a clear picture of the brewing storm, with one side seemingly holding a significant psychological advantage over the other, ready to weather any demand. Legal expert Ron Zambrano immediately tempered expectations, stressing that this mandatory appearance didn't equate to a desire to settle. It was a court-ordered process, a legal box to check, nothing more. He emphasized the immense costs already incurred, questioning the true motivations behind any offers. The sheer scale of the fees hinted at the depth of the dispute, making a simple handshake resolution feel incredibly unlikely, especially with such high-profile figures involved whose public images were also at stake. Greg Dahl, another seasoned expert, concurred, revealing a critical strategic move by the judge. The judge had deliberately withheld a ruling on a crucial summary judgment motion, ensuring a cloud of uncertainty hung over both parties. This calculated tactic was designed to pressure them into a settlement, neither side fully knowing how the court would ultimately rule. It created a tense environment where every demand and counteroffer was made under the shadow of a potentially devastating judicial decision, a gamble with massive implications. Greg's advice for Lively was stark and unequivocal. If I were Lively, I would settle this case in a nanosecond. His reasoning was brutal in its honesty. Her claims were so bad, facing a strong chance of being hammered or entirely dismissed. This expert opinion revealed the enormous uphill battle Blake faced, effectively bolstering Baldoni's confidence and strengthening his resolve to refuse any settlement that didn't reflect the true weakness of her legal position. The writing was on the wall, plain for all legal eyes to see. The core of Blake Lively's case, particularly the sexual harassment claims, was described as flimsy. Experts believe there was a strong probability the judge would throw this out entirely. The judge, known for not shying away from dismissing full cases, was a significant threat. This forensic dissection of Lively's legal standing explained why Baldoni's camp felt no urgent need to compromise, sensing a clear path to victory. Their refusal to settle on Lively's terms was rooted in a belief that justice and the law were firmly on their side. Ron predicted the settlement would be nowhere close to happening due to the overwhelming egos at play. He highlighted the inherent difficulty in negotiating when one party, presumably Lively's, was attempting to secure a win based on a future outcome that remained highly uncertain, if not improbable. This grandstanding, combined with the fragile nature of her claims, created an insurmountable barrier to any amicable resolution, fueling the tension and making Baldoni's firm stance even more entrenched. The settlement process itself involved a magistrate judge acting as a shuttle diplomat. This federal system deputy would move between separate rooms, carrying demands and counter-offers, trying to broker a peace. It was a painstaking back-and-forth negotiation, devoid of direct communication between the parties. This setup underscored the deep chasm separating Lively and Baldoni, requiring an intermediary to even attempt a dialogue, further solidifying the narrative of a protracted and bitter standoff. Despite the separate rooms, an initial joint presentation was ordered, meaning Blake and Justin would likely face each other directly for at least 30 minutes. Experts noted that while private mediations often keep parties apart, this specific order forced a confrontation, knowing that their mutual dislike would quickly lead to separation. This initial intense face-off set the tone for the day, ensuring that any lingering hope for a private one-on-one resolution was immediately extinguished, paving the way for further entrenchment. The magistrate judge's involvement carried significantly more weight than a private mediator. Unlike external arbitrators, this judge possessed the power to issue orders, levy sanctions, or demand further appearances. This inherent authority created a more austere and serious atmosphere, with both parties feeling a greater need to be deferential and respectful. This judicial oversight added a layer of pressure, yet it also meant parties might dig in deeper, hoping the magistrate would validate their position rather than force a difficult compromise. The idea of Blake and Justin stepping aside for a private, unmediated conversation was immediately dismissed as impossible. Attorneys deeply invested in the case and their clients' positions would never permit it. Friedman's not gonna be like, "Okay babe, go negotiate your case," Ron quipped, emphasizing the lawyer's firm control. This professional guardianship ensured that no unguarded emotional plea or spontaneous compromise could derail the carefully orchestrated legal battle, further isolating the principals from direct resolution. The joint session was described as a mini opening statement, where each side would incense the other by presenting why their opponent was destined to lose. This adversarial start, akin to a trial's beginning, immediately put everyone on the defensive. It was a strange way to initiate settlement talks, experts noted, as it only served to harden positions and reinforce the existing animosity. Such a combative opening cemented Justin Baldoni's resolve, seeing no reason to back down when his opponent was being so aggressive. A crucial yet unknown factor was the role of insurance coverage for Baldoni. If his legal team was playing with insurance money, it could significantly alter their willingness to settle. If an insurance company was footing the bill, Baldoni's personal financial incentive to resolve the case quickly might diminish, making him even more comfortable with a protracted legal fight. This potential insulation from direct financial exposure further strengthened his position, allowing him to more easily refuse Lively's demands. Despite the entrenched egos, the magistrate's role was to be persuasive, to deliver a come-to-Jesus moment to Lively's camp. The magistrate, as a sitting judge, would articulate the stark realities of her weak case and the high probability of a devastating loss. Ron believed this powerful, authoritative message should resonate with Blake, prompting her to reconsider her stance. This direct, unfiltered judicial assessment could be the only way to puncture the bubble of expectation and force a dose of reality. The experts drew a chilling parallel to the Depp-Heard trial, warning that a public loss for Lively could inflict irreversible damage on her career. Unlike a quietly settled case, a trial defeat leaves a long-lasting, indelible public memory. This potent warning underscored the immense pressure on Blake to find an exit plan, a way to save face even if it meant a less-than-ideal settlement. But for Baldoni, whose claims were seen as strong, this career risk simply didn't exist, making his refusal to settle on her terms understandable. From Justin Baldoni's perspective, there was little incentive to settle when his camp felt confident they were winning. Why compromise now, especially when the judge might soon gut Lively's case on summary judgment? They were in a much better suit to just roll the dice and wait to the end. This strong conviction, rooted in the perceived weakness of Lively's claims, underpinned Baldoni's firm refusal to back down, leaving Blake in an increasingly precarious and emotionally draining position. Ron suggested a strategic exit plan for Lively, settle after her case is inevitably gutted by the judge. This would allow her to save face, blaming the legal system rather than admitting fault. Such a scenario, however, still depends on Baldoni's willingness to engage in further settlement talks post-victory. It's a desperate strategy for Lively, revealing the immense pressure she faces and hinting at the emotional toll that would undoubtedly affect her and those closest to her. The consensus among experts was clear. Lively's sexual harassment claims were weak, and if allowed to proceed would be an affront to justice. Greg asserted that if the judge didn't throw them out, it would raise serious questions about fairness. This unwavering legal opinion from independent observers provided a strong justification for Baldoni's refusal to settle. It transformed his stance from mere stubbornness into a principled defense against what was widely considered a baseless legal attack. The mandatory settlement conference concluded without resolution, leaving Blake Lively in an agonizing limbo, the threat of public humiliation looming larger than ever. Justin Baldoni, bolstered by strong legal advice and an insurance safety net, held his ground, his refusal to settle on Lively's terms a testament to his confident position. The emotional weight of this protracted battle, the specter of a shattered reputation, undoubtedly brought Blake to the brink, leaving Ryan Reynolds to witness his wife's ordeal, undoubtedly snapping with protective fury as the fight for justice and public perception raged on.